worshiping a white Jesus. I don't care where you go. Black people in love with a white Christ. That's number one. Number two, you have mass incarceration of black males at a rate 4 or 5 times their percentage of the population in that particular state. Number three, you have miseducation of black children. You have the over-identification of black children in classifications of mental retardation, ADHD, learning disabled. You have record numbers of single black mothers raising our children on their own, okay? And then on top of that, you also have a black economy, which is totally dominated by people who do not look like us. I don't care where you go on the planet, black people are not in control of their economy. Your rice, your bread, your milk, your sneakers, your hats, your clothing, your transportation, your electronics, everything you buy is being sold to you by somebody who don't look like you, but more importantly, don't care about you.
What would be the solutions? Because, you know, this is a statement, but now what could be the solutions?
Solutions are simple. And the solution hasn't changed since Marcus Garvey articulated it over 100 years ago. And the solution is independence in all areas of human endeavor. The solution for African people is no different than the solution for Chinese people. The solution for African people is no different than the solution for the French people. It's the same. It's no secret. It's not hidden under a rock. We have to do what everyone else has done, and as build ourselves up independently, economically, educationally, spiritually, socially, politically. We must become a power base, which we are not, as we are today, with all of our doctors, with all of our college educated folks, with all of our black capitalistic business owners who are only looking to get rich themselves but do nothing to raise the general economic condition of black people. We are still a race of dependence. If you live in France, you're dependent on the French government for this and for that. You're dependent on white business to provide your basic needs. America, it's the same thing. Africa, it's the same thing. Wherever we are dependent on the white power structure where we live. There's 4 institutions that you must have in order to be considered an independent community. We don't have them nowhere in space and time at the same time. A hospital to protect African life. A supermarket, okay, for nutrition to preserve African life. Education to prepare the next generation of African children for the role that they must play in the freedom struggle. And number 4, a bank to finance the building of infrastructure and institutions and organizations and programs where we live. You cannot find those 4 things totally owned by African people anywhere on the face of the earth, but we will call ourselves free. There's 2 types of freedom. There's a FREEDOM and there's an FREEDUMB. White people have the freedom. We have the freedom because we're too politically uneducated to recognize that it doesn't matter if you can drive a Mercedes. It doesn't matter if you can live in a white suburb. It doesn't matter if your black child can go to a white school. At the end of the day, what do you control? What do you own? What do you produce? What do you distribute? Marcus Garvey said, a race without power and authority is a race without respect. A race that doesn't respect itself automatically forfeits the respect of other people. So you say, where did we begin? 2 things. Education and economics. It's going to be hard to break the psychological chains of slavery as long as just about everyone in this room went to a white school to get their education, a white public school to get that education. And what is the function of public education? Whether it's UK, France, Austria, Germany, USA, it doesn't matter. The purpose of education for African children in a European context is to teach the African child that you are second place and that is where you will always stay. And the only way you can rise above it is if we give you permission to rise above it. The education system's job is to make sure black children never come to believe that they have a right to replace the white boy being in control. Number 1, we're worshiping a white Jesus. I don't care where you go. Black people in love with a white Christ. That's number 1. Number 2, you have mass incarceration.
You already had your reservations towards religion.
I had reservations in kindergarten.
What informed you that early?
They said Christians are the lambs of God. And I know sheep are very stupid animals. So I wanted to be a goat. I realized goats were very intelligent and sheep. colonizing somebody is not about helping them, it's about helping yourself.
Moment on social media. Fundamentally, more than I am anything else in this world, more than I am a mother, more than I am a researcher, more than I am a sister, a community member, I am a teacher. And if I'm going to do anything, I'm going to teach.
Right.
And even in that very intense moment of profound pain and my outburst, my emotional outburst of deep, deep pain, I was teaching. I followed up explaining that there was a genocide against the Biafra people.
Right.
Right. The who were trying, the Igbo people who were trying to form an independent nation of Biafra. They wanted to be separate from the country that the British Empire had imposed on us, which was this country of Nigeria, where they kind of took a bunch of independent nations who don't have anything to do with each other, don't even speak each other's language, don't relate. Many of them were even enemies and warring at the time, smushed them all together and drew these arbitrary lines around them and called them countries and named those countries.
Right.
And then said, now y'all get along and do a country for us and be a union for us. And then go through, contentious, bloody independence processes that never really yield any real independence. You're still part of a commonwealth afterwards.
True.
And you have the eternal meddling in your affairs and the eternal extraction of your resources and the eternal fomenting of divisiveness and infighting in order to be able to control you. This is what an oppressor does, a colonizer does. These are tactics and strategies of dominance.
Right.
We were subjected to that as a larger unit of Nigeria. And then when the Igbo people said, we want our own thing, let's go and do that. Well, it so happened to be that the territory that this new country of Biafra was going to be in included very, very rich oil reserves. And the British were not going to let go of that.
Wow.
And the people that they had put in power, their puppet Nigerian governments weren't going to do that either because they needed it for the Nigerian project.
Right.
And Britain needed it for its own interests and uses. So Great Britain got directly involved in this civil war and in the war for independence and decided that they would do everything to make sure that Biafra did not go.
Wow.
And this everything meant directly funding genocide of the people of Biafra. This is what happened. This is the historical record. I'm not saying anything that's in doubt or in question, right?
Yeah.
Even when it was happening during this period of 1967 to 1970, the BBC themselves were producing documentaries, decrying it, covering all the protests that were happening in Great Britain.
This is recent.
Yeah, this is very recent. My sister, for example, is turning 60 this month. And my sister was alive at that time. She was like 5, 6.
Right.
My other brother was alive at the time, and my second brother was in my mother's belly. She was pregnant during this time, running from village to village to escape the bombs that they were throwing at villagers. So when we tell you that 3 million people, some people have said up to 5 million, 6 million, or some people quote low. So the sort of average agreed upon number that you really cannot contest is about 3 million. When you think of a Holocaust,
Right.
this is a Holocaust.
Absolutely.
Now, the Holocaust that we typically were most familiar with is the most famous one against the Jewish people,
Yes.
where they, 6 million of them were massacred.
Absolutely.
So at the most sort of conservative estimation, they did half of us,
Right.
half that number. Civilians, these are non-combatants, and more than 1 million children alone starved.
Wow.
The British paid for that. And Queen Elizabeth II was ruler. She was monarch at that time. This was the government that she was supervising. Now, I don't by this notion that she was just a statue, if
I was
you
gonna
will,
ask you that question.
or
You're reading my
a
mind.
decorative plant,
Right.
or some kind of I don't know, tchotchke sitting on the shelf.
Right.
This was a ruler. This was someone, the very crown that she had on her head, signifying the fact that she's a monarch, was made from plunder,
Right.
diamonds, blood diamonds.
Absolutely.
So the throne that she's sitting on is a throne of blood. So you cannot say that she was just this little old lady or this figurehead that really had nothing to do with anything, and it was just the British government that were making their deals and, governing however they would, without relating it directly to her, because she directly benefited her very position as a monarch, the palace that she lived in, the opulence, the obscene levels of wealth that she enjoyed
Absolutely.
were all paid for by our blood. And I don't say this figuratively, and I don't say this as something that, this long remote past, let's say, of human enslavement, which on my mother's side, she's from Trinidad, my ancestors over there were enslaved by the British. I'm talking about recent living memory of people still alive today. Her money, her government funded our slaughter. And people expected me to be calm or to be, I don't know what they expected.
Right.
When the person who literally paid money for bombs and guns and military
Absolutely.
supplies to come and massacre your people is dying. You're not supposed to dance. What's the reaction to that?
I remember when we found out that Osama bin Laden was killed, and Americans celebrated, right? Because they held him responsible for 9/11, which just passed.
One of the shocking things that dishonest European historians and writers did is that in order to cover up the ancient Egyptians, they first tried to say that the Egyptians who built the pyramids were light-skinned people. Now, when you look at the dynasties, you'll see the Old Kingdom. This is 3000 BC. Then you see the Middle Kingdom. This is coming, around 2000. Then you see the New Kingdom, which is coming, right before AD. Right? And that is when the Romans came in and when the Greeks came in. And so when the Romans came in, you find that they imitated the Egyptians. And so Cleopatra was a title. There was a number of Cleopatras. And they were actually people of European descent. So there were European people who were sitting in the thrones like the pharaohs. And much of the artifacts and mummies that you get in the museums are from the New Kingdom.
I see.
It's not from the Old Kingdom.
Right.
So it's the New Kingdom. So people get confused and they say, well, these are Egyptian things. Yes, but these are after 3,000 years had gone by of their major pyramid building, 5,000 years of their civilization. Then these people come in right at the end, right? And so that was the first lie, that they are Indo-European people. The second lie, which is even greater than that, is that they said, we cannot attribute this civilization to black African people, so we will say it was aliens who flew down on Earth,
Better alien
built
than
the
black people.
pyramids, right, and then flew back in space. And so now you have children watching Stargate
Yeah.
and other programs thinking, no, this pyramid couldn't be black people.
Wow. That's
How can they build something like that?
That's how much
Right?
hatred they have.
Right. It's an alien who came down, subjugated the people, built a pyramid, and then flew back out in space.
Yeah, that makes more sense than black people.
That
doing
makes
it.
more sense.
Yeah.
But the hardcore evidence, and that's where our young people need to study history. Don't get caught up with the story of the aliens or the story of the mutant creatures. Right? No, let us get caught up with the history of our peoples.
Right.
History of humanity, the great achievements made in Africa. And that is the reason why Carter G. Woodson and the people developed Black History Month. And that was, to highlight these achievements. And this is not to say the achievements did not happen in China, in India, in Europe, in the Americas. No. But let's take, a hidden part of history. Let's uncover a legacy. And let's give it to the world. And that is where, you know, as a Muslim, as a person of African descent, you know, I celebrate this time. It expands my mind, and I believe it will expand the mind of all children, not just black children. It will help white children to appreciate African Americans, African Caribbean, people from the African continent. They will appreciate that. And when they see LeBron James doing that slam dunk, they'll realize he's a scientist. And he may even be related, you know, to the ancient Egyptians, you know, who